You guys know it's the year of the dragon. Dragging these balls across.
Dragging these nuts.
And
There you
hard
go.
intro.
There you go, Bennett. There's your hard intro. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Human Reaction, your weekly source for words that we say. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Human Reaction, your weekly source for independent commentary on news, politics, and culture, where it's always our mission to arm you with the tools you need to cut through media misdirection and resist the mono narrative. In case you noticed, we didn't release an episode last week. There was an unfortunate occurrence, perhaps to be blamed on some occult forces. We're not sure. But this is take 2 of that episode. David, what are we talking about today?
Satan can't stop this podcast. That's all I'm saying. The
He will
power
not
of Christ compels you.
That's right.
Oh yeah, we're going to redo our year in review podcast, but this time shorter, sweeter, and uncut. So,
Ooh.
Yeah. Well, and while you're here, please like, comment, subscribe wherever you are watching us, YouTube, Rumble, whatever. And we cover a variety of topics. Check the chapter marks down below to jump to whatever you want. And I believe we're just about to hit 600 subscribers on YouTube, too.
That's right.
So I'm not sure how that number's changed since the last time we recorded, but...
Well, we didn't put out any content, so it hasn't really gone up
Yeah,
yet.
so it probably hasn't moved.
We also have an interesting surprise coming very soon. We mentioned that in the prior recording that you didn't hear, so we're going to just tease it again. Very interesting new developments for Human Reaction coming to you. All right, let's jump right into it. We've got some of our most covered stories. We're just going to recap. We don't really need to go into a lot of detail on these. We're just going to run you through what were some of the most important stories that we covered last year, starting with Ukraine. David, do you feel like we were able to accomplish what we set out to do with the Ukraine coverage?
you know, I think the larger context of Ukraine has changed. We've seen a shift specifically among the populist right on the issue as they've coalesced around an anti-war stance. It's consistent with the America First perspective. It took some time to get there, and it definitely was 2023 when that happened.
Yeah. Next up, Biden corruption. This story certainly evolved throughout the year. You know, we started with some little leaks here and there. Obviously, the laptop was a huge component of this. First, that was fake, and then it was admitted as real. And then there were bank records and all sorts of other things that came out. And now we're staring down the barrel of some impeachment proceedings going into 2024. Where are we leaving that for the year?
Yeah, I mean, it's a formal impeachment inquiry is where we're at now. What that means is that there's still several steps to go before we get to real impeachment, and then it probably a vote in the Senate. There's not enough independent votes in the Senate to make the difference to actually prosecute Biden for corruption or hold him accountable, unless something drastically changes from the given circumstances that we're in right now. But that said, it's going to be a big part of the dynamic for politics and the culture and the way we think of government in the next year.
Yeah, it could certainly weigh into the election that we're coming
And the
into.
court of public opinion has just shifted on it so much too. Like before it was just, radical like MAGA people that were the only ones talking about the story. And now just the general populace is like, it's all on their mind. Biden corrupt, the whole family, everything like that, right?
Yeah. And speaking of shifts, obviously the war in Israel and Palestine has been a huge catalyst for a lot of things. Obviously, it's been a terrible tragedy, and it has primarily shifted Republicans' views on being anti-war, where you mentioned Ukraine had sort of brought conservatives around to an anti-war stance. The war in Israel has sort of shifted that, has it not?
That's been the domestic policy of result, and it's also it's a long-term blowback of the Trump administration's work on the Abrahamic Accords. We know that the real incentive for Hamas to attack now at this time is to drive a wedge between Israel and the other and the states that they were cutting these peace deals with, because to them the issue of their time that they care most about, the Palestinians, of course, is the resolution of their land, that what they feel like was taken from them. Mm-hmm. So the Israel Hamas, especially getting kind of like coverage of both sides of that story and trying to get people on a comprehensive view, we of course jumped into there, and then what we've seen, at least what I think I've seen, is Israel systematically, they've been all the progress with the tangible war, the actual prosecution of Hamas, and while losing the air war to I think a more sympathetic globe. Even as there was a lot of outrage about October 7th and what happened, understandably, there's this security dilemma that Israel's in, where they have such a dangerous foe right on their doorstep, and their methods that they've decided to use to prosecute this war have resulted in largely the global opinion, I think, turning against them.
Yeah, it's very interesting. And it seems like things are certainly spilling out into the region. Obviously, there have been disruptions to major shipping routes, and there are now warships, both American and Iranian, heading towards what seems like an impending conflict.
The Yemen war, because we've talked about the Yemen war before, and everything that's been going on there, that we've been supporting Saudi Arabia's war against the Houthis in Yemen for, 4 years now? I mean, 6 years now, something like that. It's a long blockade of Yemen that's resulted in one of the worst humanitarian crises up until Israel, Hamas, and the Palestine issue.
Yeah, longer than that. It's been back since Obama.
Well, I know like the whole story goes all the way back to Obama, but I mean like where we're at right now, where it's a long story, and we actually covered it like in February. Mm-hmm. But those guys are the ones that are shooting rockets at it. I mean, and this is one of those great like keyhole moments too, where a bunch of people are just, wait, there's a war going on in Yemen? Like the Banter Republic's finally figuring that out. And oh wait, we've been on one side of this war for a very long time, and the people who we've been bombing don't like it. Kind of moment that we're in right now, where it's like, well, of course they're attacking our shipping, and of course they're doing this because they want to gin up sympathy from the Muslim world against the Saudis. Right?
Sounds like some time slice bias going on here. I think you can look out for some deep dive conflict coverage, some deep journalistic research from David Rand in 2024 on that.
Another interesting dynamic around the Israel-Hamas stuff too is just the dynamic on the right and kind of where the dividing lines are lying. And some of it seems to be generational, but not entirely. Like you end up having kind of the neocon Ben Shapiro's of the world that are taking like the very pro-Israel stance, right? And then you have like Tucker Carlson, Vivek Ramaswamy, that are much more of like the America first. They're kind of like, we shouldn't be funding it. And they're kind of like, the Overton window is just like an interesting spot on that. Like everybody's kind of like support Israel no matter what, but like the Overton window of how much you actually support. Is it just diplomatic? Is it economic, et cetera? Is an interesting
Speaking
slot.
of the Overton window as well, the public sentiment around censorship really changed last year, especially with the Twitter files. Kyle, what was the significance there for you?
Well, it shows how much these intelligence agencies have been actively participating in this censorship regime by going to, and we're just seeing it with Twitter, but it seems obvious that it's happening with the others, right? Where they're actually going in, paying money. They're kind of like telling the social media platforms to censor individuals, even just like small accounts. And it's kind of unveiled this entire apparatus of like how the money inflows happen for the censorship to work, for the government to kind of go around the First Amendment and outsource the problem to the companies to fix, so that the government's not technically like intervening, but they kind of are. It's the way it's done has become unveiled to the public at large. For so long there was just like, you just have these crazy figures like Alex Jones or Donald Trump or whatever. They get banned and they're high profile, but like we're starting to see that exactly how the sausage was made on that.
Yeah, which nobody should ever want to know. Speaking of Donald Trump, the last major story of our year in review, Trump legal saga. I mean, he's been through so many court hearings. I don't think that any of us could actually name how many charges he's facing, or honestly how many courts are taking up cases around his, him. We did just recently have Colorado and Maine remove Trump from the ballot, and then Colorado put him back on the ballot, and California said they wouldn't take him off the ballot. So, David, do you think this is going to be something that spills over into 24 as other states either decide yay or nay? And will this go to the Supreme Court?
If it goes to the Supreme Court, it's difficult to say what's going to happen. It depends on probably getting a real prosecution to go all the way through to conviction in time, which doesn't seem likely. But you never know. They might expedite it. There is a lot of questions still about whether or not, the particular article of the Constitution will be interpreted by an originalist or textualist like Gorsuch or Roberts, or not Roberts, who am I thinking of? Clarence Thomas, to imply that with a conviction on some kind of felony charge or election overthrow charge. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that. That would result in an actual suspension from him from being an eligible candidate. That's the real question.
And the real interpretation that they would be taking up is because the Constitution doesn't specifically state that one has to be convicted of insurrection. There's sort of some interpretation there as to, well, then how do you come to the conclusion that one is guilty of that in order to be held accountable under this clause, right?
Yeah, my guess is, okay, so there's the people who think that the power is the only thing that exists, right? There's no ideological commitments by anyone. It's all just power politics, just with the dress up of ideological commitment. And what is the Supreme Court, right? There are a bunch of people who, at least two of them, were appointed by Trump. So what are they going to do? They're going to, they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them, would be their argument. I don't think that's necessarily true in this case. I think a lot of these guys have multi-decades, commitment to textualism and originalism. So what are they going to do? Well, the vagueness that you're mentioning is an opportunity for them to use that textualism, originalism to get out of the quandary they're in, right? Because if they do allow for the suspension of the most popular candidate in the race, there's a lot of social cost to that, right? And I do think they do weigh that, but they have to put it through that filter of how do I justify this, using my view of what the just role of the judiciary is. So if it goes to Supreme Court, that's an interesting story that might play out this year. The other one is just every time that they bring a new legal case, every time there's news coverage of a legal case, Trump actually gets more popular.
Which is such an interesting dynamic.
Yeah. It's blowback, just domestic politics, right? It's, blowback expands beyond just a foreign policy theory, right?
Yeah.
It happens all over the place.
It's true. And we talk about it a lot because it's ever present.
Another thing that you actually skipped over, Joe, was the conservative rebellion in Congress as a major story. There was two major speaker fights that happened over this year. Again, kind of showcasing the divisions on the right, but you have these holdout types like the Matt Gaetz, the Matt Rosendales, those types. Really, I think, doing a very good job as like a minority opinion in Congress and kind of getting what they want and using their minority status to be able to like really sway power dynamics within Congress quite well. Yeah. So much to the point that ended up getting a new speaker with Mike Johnson, right?
Yeah, and we will see how his speakership impacts the year to come. Obviously an election year and a lot of contentious things weighing. But curious to know, for those of you listening and watching, what was your most impactful story for 2023, looking back on a really busy year? We'd love to have you let us know in the comments. If you are a small business owner looking for exponential growth, you have to connect with Adam Thuen at Intellectual Patriots. He will revolutionize your business game and help you get to the next level. Adam can streamline your business practices and advertising strategies to improve your bottom line. His expertise in data engineering means he can build you the systems you need to collect and analyze market data. His mission is to provide you with invaluable insights to fuel your success. From grant writing and business proposals to digital systems integrations, even AI management, Intellectual Patriots is a one-stop shop for cutting-edge solutions. Don't wait another second. Visit intelpatriots.com to learn more. That's INTEL Patriots.com. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Zesty Beverages. They're on a mission to unf the standard American diet by crafting drinks with fewer calories and more nutrients from real food. Their lineup of delicious offerings now includes Electric Peak Yerba Mate, postbiotic sodas, keto-friendly, ready-to-drink margaritas, and hard teas. Wondering what a postbiotic soda is? Well, head on over to zestybev.com to learn more and find a retailer near you. Once again, check them out online at zestybev.com. That's ZESTYBEV.com. At this point, guys, let's transition into our sort of best of, starting with our most cringe moment of the year. And I will lead it off. My most cringe moment of the year was our dear friend Mitt Romney and his hot dog day video. Let's check it out.
Well, as you all know, today is National Hot Dog Day. And perhaps you also know that hot dog is my favorite meat. I love hot dogs. I love them in buns. I love them outside of buns. I love them with baked beans. I just like hot dogs. It's the best meat there is, without question. So to all of you who, like me, are celebrating National Hot Dog Day, congratulations to you, and may there be many, many more hot dogs served in our wonderful land.
I'm Mitt Romney, and I approve this message.
I just like hot dogs.
I actually think that might be my favorite clip after you put it on the thing. I was just like, I forgot about it. And it's just such a juicy clip.
Really is as juicy as a Johnsonville
nice
brat. Oh man, I just don't know that I've ever been told congratulations for like a hot dog day, right? Like that's such a weird thing to say. Congratulations to you on hot dog day.
What does the hot dog lobby have over Senator Romney? What do they do?
Oscar Myers coming in hot for
Oscar Myers, the deep state, the true deep state, big hot dog.
Yeah, I heard they're rolling out an Oscar Mayer Wiener Mobile with ground-to-air missiles on it. It's going to be rolled out in the Middle East here soon.
That did come from an episode that we had titled "Hot Dogs and Cluster Bombs."
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. We did name a whole episode about it, so obviously it was an impactful moment for the year.
It's so good. It's just like such a good moment.
The confidence he says without question. Is
No debate. No debate.
There's only one best meat.
There's only one best meat.
Not chicken, not brisket.
Not a good juicy steak.
Yeah, no.
Just the
hot dog.
weird like pink goo that falls off of the production line that they stuff into. Anyway, hot dogs. Kyle, what was yours?
Mine was that cringe DeSantis smile moment at the debates, and he actually did. There's actually two different debates where the exact same clip came out of it, basically. So here's a very, very short, cringy moment from Ron DeSantis.
And as your president, I will not let you down. God bless you.
Governor DeSantis, thank you.
The tongue sneaking in there is the
that's
subtle
the weird part
moment.
of that.
Yeah, it's
Yeah,
like,
Just like I don't know how to smile like a human. It's so strange.
It's sort of like it makes me think of like the Anchorman. I don't know what to do with my hands clip, but it's just like I don't know what to do with my tongue. It's just like,
keep it in your mouth, Ron.
Where does it go?
But it also does. I think it encapsulates a bigger picture of kind of how much of a flop the Ron DeSantis campaign is. Like this is just like a funny, goofy moment, but like he just lacked the charisma, and it just never took off, despite. All last year, he was kind of like, oh, he might be the guy that replaces Trump, right? Like, he's going to be the guy. Conservatives are going to get behind him. Everybody loves him. But nobody had really, and I had predicted this early on the podcast. I think when I was still a guest before I joined the podcast.
Yeah, it was like February. You were like, he's just too nerdy. People haven't seen him enough to know that he's actually a nerd, and I think that's actually kind of born fruit.
And he just doesn't have the it factor that's going to capture the attention of people, really. And
unlike your boy Vivek.
Unlike my boy Vivek, right? Which he's captured a lot of attention. Like the poll numbers, obviously, I think he's like a lot of people's second candidate because they prefer Trump, right? For the moment that exists, right?
Yeah.
But he has definitely captured the internet by storm. Like go to any clips on YouTube and you'll see he gets way more views than any of the other candidates, right? He is the internet candidate, kind of that third party element.
And I think just yesterday it was announced, or he announced, that he's not going to be participating in the CNN debate coming up. He's going to be hosting a
live show with
a town hall
with Tim Cast,
with Tim Pool. Yeah, so he's abandoning network news in favor of going with the internet culture, which I think is smart because he's polling last of the remaining field. Doesn't seem very likely that he's going to capture the nomination. So he's really, I think, just putting his eggs in the future basket and really focusing on his future constituents, which are, the younger demographics. David, what was your most cringe moment of the year?
You guys is like fun and happy. Mine's like
sad,
depressing, but it is cringe.
That tracks.
It was very cringe. This is Joe Biden talking to the people of Maui.
I don't want to compare difficulties, but we have a little sense, Jill and I, what it's like to lose a home. Years ago, now 15 years ago, I was in Washington doing Meet the Press. It was a sunny Sunday, and lightning struck at home on a little lake that's outside of our home, not a lake, a big pond, and hit a wire and came up underneath our home into the heating ducts, the air conditioning duct. To make a long story short, I almost lost my wife, my 67 Corvette, and my cat.
Joe Biden is trying to relate to regular people, but he fails. And it's so cringe. It's so terrible. And it's just not to compare, but then I'm going to compare, and then I'm going to make up a bunch of stuff that didn't happen, that's been proven that didn't happen, and he's been telling the same lie forever, and he's never held accountable for it. And it just demonstrates how ridiculous our president is, how ridiculous the media accountability around him is. It's absolutely absurd.
It also makes me think of, there's tons of clips like this, just like that go back to when he was spry and he was actually like very sharp, where he was doing the same stuff. He's just like talking about how I was the top of my class. It turns out he wasn't, you know, like all this stuff, right? Like this is a very common gaffe for him to make, is just kind of blatantly just talking stream of consciousness, like lies out, because he comes from an age where the internet didn't exist.
You couldn't fact check it so
there was
readily.
no fact checking on it.
Well, this is a really interesting evolution then for a guy, who was a sort of a historical liar to then become senile. It's like, dude, just like bets are off on what he's going to say. And obviously this is one of those cases. And even if it was true, like, just in what world can you equate almost losing your car and your cat to what happened in Maui? That's just
There's a time and place.
incredibly out of touch.
Well, imagine if George Bush showed up on 9/11 and be like, yeah, this one time, I hit the garage when I was trying to park my car. And that was, wouldn't that be the most cringe moment you've ever seen? Well, this is kind of like what he did, right? I mean, it's absolutely, you got these people who are in profound suffering. You look at the guys behind them as they're just like, oh my God, is he really going to say this? He did. And the fact that there's a group of people who are just like, I can forgive that. Yeah, whatever. At least he's good on abortion.
Well, I think the thing is the mainstream media just doesn't really show this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Most people probably don't even know. But I think you win for most cringe clip because there's no way that it gets more cringe than that.
But the hot dogs, man.
I mean, the hot dogs was funny and cringe. This was just
cringe,
purely cringe.
Sad cringe.
Yeah. On to our next category, highlight of the year. Kyle, why don't you start this one off? What was your highlight of 2023?
I was just generally excited for all the new technologies stuff. AI and crypto is two areas that captured my attention quite heavily. Obviously, everybody knows I'm kind of like the crypto degen of the podcast. So, we existed in this time post bull cycle, like where everybody was super hyped, and now nobody like has been talking about it for the last year. But so much cool stuff has been building in the background, and now I think we're starting to see the rise and the comeback of it right now. So I think there's going to be a lot more hype in that area. And then just AI, and I think Dave would agree with me here that this was his big thing, was like the rise of the LLM AI. And kind of like watching the different warfare that's going on with the kind of like the EAC movement and the I feel like you're about to
and of course the Biden administration's regulations of it.
AI is kind of a fancy thing. It's, first of all, it's 2 letters.
Kind of had to.
I saw Joe just like waiting with a button, just like what is happening right now? What's going on?
Poised over the button, just waiting for a moment.
You gotta ignore it so
That's
you can
right.
jump in. But yeah, you're right. The LLMs, large language models, was like, I think, the big change this year. I think if you're writing a history book, you're gonna say this year the introduction of AI to a mass audience. Also, the graphic image software here, Midjourney,
Leonardo, a bunch of these things are really cool.
Have really changed the scene online when it comes to digital art, when it comes to lots of stuff, introducing a whole new suite of political problems, regulation problems. And yeah, the regulation of pushback. I mean, the effective accelerationism and the surrounding ideological buttress to immediately push back on the Biden administration for their regulation of GPUs in order to prevent AI from getting out of control in this like tech panic equivalent to, and I actually found this analogy like really perfect, especially if you read The Sovereign Individual. It's like a tech panic equivalent to Y2K, right? Where everyone's convinced that Y2K, everything was going to crash down in 1999. And if you're a millennial, but if you're a millennial, you really remember this. Like, yeah. We were like in a bunker in the Elkhorns on Y2K. Right?
Seriously?
I was 5.
Really, no.
Nice.
We went to my cousin's place, and it was like, it was a huge deal, and then it was a big nothing burger, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think the large language model becoming sentient and taking over the world, turning us all into paperclips, is like Y2K.
Yeah.
And in reality, it's just an overreaction, and it's probably not as big a deal as people say.
And also on the regulatory side, like I'm very excited to see all the tech nerds. There's this division happening, and the tech nerds are kind of like peeling away from their traditional like lefty San Francisco vibe. I'm like noticing there's actually like real ideological division that's forming, and we're watching these like lobbying arms of the crypto and of the AI people starting to actually have like real effect in Washington right now. So I'm excited to see where that moves going forward in the 2024 kind of era, and also just like the election. I think it's going to have impact on the election.
And one more note on that is, with the rise of like the thought leadership of the effective accelerationists, we also have the effective altruists, kind of the lefty types.
Sam Bankman-Fried, for example.
Sam Bankman-Fried and then the board of OpenAI both take a huge nosedive this year. So interesting development that definitely lead in the right direction.
And just in general, that ideology at large, it's not even just that, but I think it extends beyond tech. Just like DEI stuff, all of these like egalitarian movements that have existed in like corporate environments and academia, all of that just seems to be crumbling down over the last few months. And that's a very interesting thing to watch.
Yeah. One point of that is the president of Harvard, Claudine Gay, just stepped down like yesterday, right? Mm-hmm. Which after a pretty lengthy plagiarism scandal that followed all of the stuff that we covered regarding, the way that the Ivy Leagues handled all the censorship and versus free speech conversation with Israel Palestine. So
then the plagiarism was detected using
AI. Yeah, that's right.
So
that's right.
Greater accountability to the elites is the interesting function of AI, potentially.
Quite true. Quite true. Well, guys, my highlight of the year was this podcast.
Aww.
Yeah, I know. So warm and fuzzy. No, really. I mean, having set out in January to do an episode a week and to have held up to that and to have made it to a new year with maybe a couple of technical glitches along the way and maybe making up some ground doing 2 episodes a week here and there. We pulled off 52 episodes in a year, which I think is a great accomplishment. And I'm very proud of the work that we've put in. And I look forward to another year with you guys doing this. And of course, we couldn't do it without you listening and watching. So thank you. We really appreciate it. I hope you continue to do so. And again, join the Discord if you want to have a say in the things that we cover, because we like to provide value for you. We want to know what you guys are talking about and thinking about. So join the conversation with us.
And we are deeply thinking about more and more ways of how to provide value and kind of give to the people that are following us too. And
that's right.
We got some things in the works right now.
Soon.
Soon.
All right. To our next category, most important cultural shift in 2023. David, what was your most important cultural shift?
Richmond, north of Richmond. It was specifically that song and the way that the intellectual elite of the right reacted to it. In sympathy or not in sympathy, the way that a lot of people were like, well, actually, sort of the experience of everyday people, the way they're talking about and thinking about it. And then to have a populist song that told the story of how regular people are suffering, but not from like a Bruce Springsteen, like, yeah, just vote for the Union Democrat and that'll fix everything kind of point of view, but like that says, no, the problem is the government. It was a very interesting moment, something that I haven't seen, ever. And it was very much, it also had, it happened because of social media. It went viral on TikTok. It went viral on Instagram Reels, places like that. That's where I got to, and on Twitter. And that's how it got to such prominence. It wasn't through a record label. It wasn't even through things like SoundCloud. It was, social media that brought it to a forefront.
Yeah.
And then it really was a great moment of a guy who was working hard in obscurity, trying to bring his talent to life in an authentic way that told real stories about people, and then, was recognized for that effort. And that's just a beautiful American thing.
Absolutely. Yeah, it really is. And one of my favorite moments around it was when it was like right after the song came out, there was a Republican primary debate and they used it at the intro.
Oh, yeah.
And then he tweeted out or something like, hey guys, like, don't use that song. It's about you. Like, you're the rich men north of Richmond. Like, get it together. Oh, that was funny.
I forgot about that moment. Yeah.
Yeah, it was kind of a rich irony there. Kyle, what was your most important cultural shift?
The whole Elon Musk saga as a whole. Like, we already talked about the Twitter files and how much it kind of affected people just realizing like how psyoped they really are and have been for so long. But Elon Musk buying X, Twitter, now known as X, is completely changing the media landscape. Like, all of the major ways that people get news, entertainment. I just saw Elon was talking about how they're at the highest engagement that they've ever been, like as of 2 days ago.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of those big stories that we said were like the highlights of the year, a lot of that came because of X. Like in a lot of ways, it formulated the environment for kind of where the Overton window can exist on all of these major stories. Like it's setting the battlefield for like ideological debate in ways that people I don't even think realized could be set. So the whole X dynamic, I'm excited to see it continue, and also just watching the elite reaction to it too, like all the lawfare that's existing, all of the calls for anti-Semitism from the Anti-Defamation League against Elon Musk. Like that whole battleground has been fascinating, and it's been incredible to kind of watch.
Yeah, it's really interesting how Elon has transformed from sort of this figure that was very liked by the left because of what he was doing for
10 years ago, right?
Green energy and electric cars and all this stuff, into him becoming this villain because he has supported free speech absolutism to some extent.
And he's such an interesting figure too, because like there's a lot of ideas that he's promulgating as well that I can't believe are now like the Overton window has shifted. Things like the idea of overpopulation being a scam.
Yeah.
Like he's probably one of the most vocal people on saying like, no, we need more population, right? Like he's one of those people. And also being the environmental guy, he's also has a much more nuanced opinion of like, that's almost Alex Epstein type of opinion, where it's like, no, we can't just get rid of fossil fuels right now. People will starve, right? Like that. He's become such an important figure on the cultural front, and that eventually leads to the political front, and I think where the future lies.
Totally,
he's playing a major role in that.
100%, and we did see that. People starving. We saw Sri Lanka. Massive riots when they tried to get rid of fossil fuels there because people literally couldn't cook food. We've seen things around, the banning of nitrogen fertilizers in the Netherlands and now most recently in France, I believe. Like there are these movements that are happening. People are pushing back against. Elon is certainly, and others are certainly like kind of leading that charge, which has been a real good thing, I think, for humanity.
And also just things like how simple of a feature community notes is.
Yeah.
And how effective it is. Like it gets it right most of the time.
Yeah.
Really. Just stuff like that. Like it does seem like Twitter is closer to the truth than any of the social media platforms. Like I like the way that Elon phrases that. Of like, I just want to be the closest to the truth.
Yes.
Like we can't get it 100%. It's not going to be right all the time, but at least we can get closer and aim for it. Right.
We're in a bottom up process rather than top down, right? Rather than putting a board in charge of truth, we're going to let everyday people vote on it and try to contribute to it.
Oh, and another element too, the ad stuff, like all the adpocalypse. And I think this goes into something that we were saying earlier, is like how the DEI movement has failed. Like watching the combat between Elon and Bob Iger at Disney. I believe you have a thing queued on the soundboard about that, right?
Queuing that up.
Go yourself.
Yeah,
a moment.
Like that dynamic as well is just incredible moment.
Totally.
I think it just shows the culture war has completely flipped.
Totally. And I think that is also indicated by my most important cultural shift in 23, which was Tucker leaving Fox. Huge moment for the highest rated cable news broadcaster to effectively be fired from his job and then go to the internet and become 10 times bigger. What a sea change. And what indication that independent media, non-legacy media has taken the ball from the incumbents in a really meaningful way. And I mean, it's so heartening to me, honestly, because it's like, it gives a little bit more validity to something like this, right? Where there's actually maybe a little bit additional value granted to guys like us who are, working from the bottom up to try to make this happen. If someone like Tucker can make it happen and can build a network and all that stuff, it gives me a lot of hope that more independent voices can rise out of that too.
Yeah.
And it shows like the amount of people online willing to go to there for their source of news. Obviously he's moving from a traditional media to the new media and bringing a lot of people with him.
Yeah.
And that's the other important part of that. I think it's really interesting, right? Because those gatekeepers continue to crumble. Looking at it from a decade by decade basis, from where we're at in 2001 till today, of just how controlled is your media. They've tried to put in the Twitter files. They tried to put in Project Mockingbird of our era, and it crumbled apart because one billionaire bought a company and decided to let journalists have access to the Slack messages. So the ability for certain people who are the gatekeepers to control things are reduced. And Tucker leaving and then having such a great platform on X, and then eventually starting his own network, I think is a indicator of that, a further indicator of that watershed moment, maybe.
Yeah.
I love how much he's trolling the other like the mainstream media outlets. Like they're putting ads like on trucks and on billboards like right in front of their headquarters, and it's just it's hilarious to watch. Like I just saw one yesterday, and I posted it in our Discord that was like it says "Your Great Replacement," and that's Tucker
Just with his shit-eating grin on his face.
Yeah.
That's pretty
like,
clutch.
I don't know if that's coming from like his network or it's just somebody buying a billboard and putting it up. Like it could be either. I don't really know. It's hilarious.
All I
so
know
true.
is that it's funny.
It's so
It's
funny.
so
Hilarious. It's hilarious. And I love how much more adventurous he's gotten, and with bringing so many people from Fox with him, I think the breadth of stories and that he's able to convey to that audience, which is probably traditionally a little bit older audience, right? Like my parents' generation. That's a big thing. You know, he's actively shifting the Overton window, I think, to a class of issues, and you know, like talking about Julian Assange, for example, to people who maybe previously didn't know who Julian Assange was. Like that to me is huge. But not to dig too far into that.
He's also legitimizing other like creators as well, because he's been going on a podcast tour, and like some people I'm just kind of surprised he's gone on, whereas like that person's on his radar. But that's also been interesting as well to see, and just kind of see him collaborate with the media like landscape in such a way of the podcast media landscape. It's been entertaining.
It's very entertaining, and I'm sure the executives at Zyn are really excited for his enthusiastic endorsement of their product.
Yeah, that's like been like the best advertising campaign for them ever. Is just Tucker getting fired from Fox News.
Seriously,
because he just promotes Zyn everywhere.
You just can't ask for anything better than that. All right, most important political shift in 23. Excuse me, I think I got a little bit of the cough here.
You got the black lung? I
got the black lung. Kyle, what was your most important political shift in 2023?
I have in our notes hashtag Team Vivek, because we enjoy memeing about that on the podcast. But I actually think it extends beyond that. I think we're watching the rise of new ways of doing politics. I don't think we're quite there yet, but just that internet style candidate. Vivek has really figured out how to capture the mind of the youth and how to use the internet effectively to really boost his own profile. Watching him kind of doing the TikTok thing and getting on with like YouTube influencers has been interesting to watch. And I think it also shows a dynamic of where the future of the right is. I don't think the right's like necessarily ready for him right now, but he's going to be around. It's sort of like Van Jones said, he's got 50 years to spew his like poison, right?
I'm shaking.
I'm shaking. It shows the future of the right and where, culturally speaking, the right is moving towards, I think. But also adding to that, I think the RFK stuff is very interesting as well on the left, showing the division on there. Like he is very much the Vivek of the left, it seems like. And him going independent is another big thing. Like, who knows how many votes somebody like RFK ends up polling on this. Like he has the highest favorability ratings out of any candidate right now.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's a sort of a
but the problem is he's running as an independent. You know, he's no longer running as a Democrat, so he's not going to get the party votes that he would. But it'll be interesting to watch like how kind of Ross Perot like he might be in this election as well.
Yeah.
What do you want me to talk about? You just look at me like I was supposed to talk about that, but you covered it so well. No,
I thought you had some dad.
I think his coverage of crypto, the way he was able to articulate what I think is, you know, the big issues of our time when it comes to most important shifts of America first, kind of like how Israel, Hamas has kind of turned that, kind of like you were saying, kind of turned that against itself and kind of exposed an inner contradiction within America first. But Vivek was obviously the one who came out of that, both with the most amount of criticism, but a most amount of like clarity of like, this is how, if you believe this is how you talk about Israel Hamas. And that shows a thought leadership to me that was way beyond any other candidate that I've seen for a very long time. And I know we compare them all the time, and it's not a very fair comparison on a lot of levels, but it reminded me of Ron Paul in this.
Dude, totally.
There was so much certainty and clarity about his vision that you couldn't help but kind of be brought along by it.
For sure.
He's got like the charisma and the intellect.
Yeah.
And normally you have a candidate that has like one or the other, and he's got both of those, right?
Yeah. And it's, one of our things is, you know, one of our mental models that we return to all the time is like, you have to be either hot, cute or cool. And he's kind of like on the cool factor, right? Like he's able to.
Wait, aren't hot and cute the same thing?
No,
They're not.
no.
Oh.
Hot is like TikTok.
Oh, okay.
Cute is like pudgy penguins.
Oh, all right, fair.
Yeah. They're like, or cute.
You're twerking or you're a plush toy.
Yeah,
or,
yeah, right. Or you're Andrew Tate.
Okay.
Right? Like you're wearing sunglasses inside, or whatever. Or you're going to boxing matches and you're dabbing up the guy who knocked the guy out, right? That kind of like proximity to cool is another kind of thing that Vivek's bringing. And then additionally, like incredibly smart and able to articulate a wide range of issues. He got hit by Reason this week for a lot of his stuff. I don't know if you guys saw that.
Classic Reason.
Yeah, right.
That's all I got to say.
Some of the criticisms were good. Some of them are in bad faith.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even really matter. It's the way that the framing of the article is set is enough.
Yeah.
Right?
Do you think that Reason is concerned that Vivek is courting a lot of libertarians with a lot of these Ron Paul-esque moments?
I think Reason is much more in bed with like the DC culture and
the Beltway libertarians.
Vivek is very not part of that culture. He's not courting that culture.
Sure.
So there's just a cultural class that exists even beyond politics.
You know, I think of it kind of like that. There's Matt Welch is the author. One of the things I've tried to do, because I keep hearing this and I keep on like thinking like, okay, how do I better refine our mental model around this to like make sure that we're treating them fairly, is that Reason's a platform of which lots of different people speak. Some people will agree with Kyle's point of view, some people not, right? Of insider, outsider. Matt Welch, is he an insider? Yeah, maybe he's been a staple at that organization for a very long time. Is he a defender of the status quo in DC? I don't think so. But I do think that there's like a conventionality of thought that he is very skeptical of claims of conspiracy. Because I think for good reason, because lots of conspiracies turn out to be false. But I don't think that the January 6th is really the hill to die on for conspiracy to disprove, simply because there's so much conflicting information, such a complicated issue, right? So so many different things happen in one day. And so was the FBI had hundreds or dozens of agents there? Well, we're no longer debating if they had agents there.
Right.
We're debating how many.
Yeah. What was their mission? Provocateuring or not? If you ask the FBI, was your mission to provocate a more violent outcome, or was your mission to curb it? What are they going to tell you? Regardless of what their actual mission was, they're going to tell you it was there not to provoke.
Yeah.
Come on.
And here's also the thing is like, because like this is where I've been since 2021 when Jan 6 happened, is I'm actually pretty sure that tweeting about Jan 6 is what got me my Twitter account taken away from me, was exactly talking about how many provocateurs were in there. Because I remember watching videos of like people in black vans coming out and going and instilling like animosity. And those existed on the internet at one point. And I remember just I was like kind of like troll tweeting about it in my normal way of tweeting. But like that is an area. And then I would listen to a lot of the more beltway libertarian types being like, that's crazy. Like that is insane to even think about. Right. And it's like, you guys are supposed to be the ones kind of like very skeptical of government power. And you're just like, they wouldn't do this. Like, yes, no historical, like, that's usually my gripe, is that it's where their impulses tend to be in the moments that matter.
Yeah,
that's where I have gripes with kind of the beltway libertarian types.
For sure.
And it is like it could be framed as a pursuit of truth, or it could be framed as like you're not thinking coherently enough, across like the strategy of what's going on right now, what we don't know, and you're kind of biasing towards a conventionality that's actually undermining your case.
Yeah.
So my other big important political shift here is free speech absolutism and the death of it. Right. The right was staked all of its claim on the First Amendment, and then Israel-Hamas happened, and then the same sort of language is being brought around again to say people feel unsafe, so therefore we should crack down on speech on college campuses. It's a very leftist kind of framing of this sort of stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. If someone is actually unsafe, if there's actually a Jewish student someplace who is actually physically unsafe, yes, you should curb any speech that's required to get them speech. It wouldn't be free speech if it's actually violent, but any speech that would therefore like put them in bodily harm, right? Someone's out there saying, we're going to go burn down the synagogues. You got to stop that person before they commit a crime. But that's not happening from what I can tell. From what I could tell, and I'm really open to information to change my mind here, but from what I could tell, this is a lot of freak out about just people saying things that people are interpreting in the interpretive layer of communication to be violent, provocative sort of speech, but it's actually political speech. And so even though it kind of resulted in, a Harvard professor getting a lot of attention, who then wound up being, let go because of plagiarism, that the whole question begging of like, how are we going to apply DEI in this case, I think has helped tear apart DEI, which is a good thing. But the other side of it, it's kind of crumbled a lot, I think, of the fundamental consistency on the right for the commitment for free speech.
Yeah, I think it is illustrative of the claim that both Democrats and Republicans who tend to be somewhat authoritarian in nature will use that authoritarian nature that they do have in the ways that they want to apply it to you if they're not ideologically consistent, committed to an idea of individualism or free speech in that way. And so I think the consistent view is that so long as there's no violence being perpetrated or no direct threats being made, everyone should be allowed to speak their minds on these issues.
Right. Man, we have people on the right saying we need to ban certain phrases because it's insensitive.
And worth mentioning too, Vivek's been pretty good on this.
Yes.
Just everybody else has not been. Right.
And then what's yours, Joe? What's your big development?
Well, my major political shift for 2023 has to be the election of Javier Milei in Argentina, the first libertarian president ever elected in the world. Huge moment for libertarians who are not used to winning much of anything at all. I think it's indicative, really, of hopefully a global shift towards freedom, individualism, populism, those things that sort of push away this globalist tendency that we've experienced over the last, in our lifetimes certainly, and also beyond. It seems like he's already getting a lot of really good work done, and it'll be really interesting to see where he is able to go in 2024. It really will be a proving ground. I think, there's obviously already pushback to some things that he's doing. Socialists are staging protests and whatnot.
Not just socialists, bankers.
And bankers.
Like instead of like the Occupy Wall Street movement, it's like bankers outside protesting in front of the central bank there. It's hilarious to see it.
You kind of do love to see it. It's a pretty clown world moment.
Yeah.
We are the 0.001%.
Don't take away our power. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and it's also it's been fascinating to watch. Man, I wish that he spoke like English consistently, because there'd be just so many good clips that would be great to react to on the podcast. It's like he's just going around like there was a thing, I think you sent it to both of us, where there's a guy like talking about socialism and Milei is just like in the background like, what did you say? What's this bullshit?
I think that was a joke. Like it was obviously done for the camera.
I'm pretty sure it was like an act.
But it was so hilarious. And I just wish that our discourse was as... What is the word for that?
Irreverent.
Yeah, it is just so like he is just calling people names, and it's just absolutely hilarious the whole way through.
Yes, the authenticity there. He is who he is, and he lets it all fly.
Instead, we're like, no, we have to ban Trump because he says mean things.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Like it's very much like the Chad dog meme versus versus like the virgin dog meme, where it's like Milei is just like out here just like cussing out like socialists, and then here we're just like, oh no, he's saying mean tweets.
Yeah. No, I love it. Okay, so let's pivot to the biggest something burger that turned out to be a nothing burger. Kyle, let's start with you. What was yours?
I mean, we already kind of talked about this a little bit, but my biggest thing was just because it happened so recently is we just spent like 30 minutes on this podcast talking about the Sam Altman leaving OpenAI, and like 2 hours after we were done recording, he's just like, nope, he's back at OpenAI. but it wasn't necessarily an entirely a nothing burger. Like there was a lot of interesting things that came out of it, and I think it showed a lot of people, and we were able to cover this on the podcast, showcasing the factions at play here and the ideological divide of like the effective altruists versus the effective accelerationists, and kind of everything in between, and watching where people lie on the advancement of AI versus like pausing it, and just like where people are kind of like in their egalitarian views of the whole thing too, and kind of where the DEI stuff creeps in, all that. Like we got to cover that, so that was interesting to see. But at the end of the day, Sam Altman's just back at OpenAI, right?
Well, that's how that goes sometimes. David, what was yours?
The DeSantis campaign. And
Bird.
like we said when we watched him smile, it was just it's a real bear cat, right? It's not a clear good thing or bad thing in my mind, because I think Ron DeSantis is not the worst kind of Republican, and he's definitely courted, I think, a lot of views that I appreciate, and people say he was an excellent governor. So it's kind of sad that he wasn't able to pick up more trend. I would rather see him than Nikki Haley.
Oh yeah,
almost universally.
No, like Ron DeSantis is a guy like I'd be happy to have him as my governor.
Yeah,
like,
not bad.
Like,
not pumped on his foreign policy either, but it's better than Haley's. I'd rather someone who's willing to at least be like, well, I'm not really sure what I'm going to do here, versus like, let's bomb Iran tomorrow. So the other one was return to masks. There was a point there, kind of late fall, when we were like, oh my God, they're bringing masks back, and it was like a whole thing. And then maybe it didn't happen because the pushback, but maybe it was never going to happen. We actually just freaked out about nothing. I'm not sure.
It's really hard to say, in hindsight.
I will say I've seen an uptick. Not a huge one, but it is there.
Well, I mean, people are coughing. It's changed the culture on the left, for sure. I don't think we're ever going... Well, it's going to be a long time before the lefty really lets that go.
I'm sure they ever will.
But the Overton window there is shifting on the left so much, where I'm seeing like lefty commentators and stuff that are being more critical of like Pfizer, and they're kind of looking back at the vaccine period and being like, okay, maybe the vaccines weren't as effective as they were supposed, like all these things. But I would never say that on this podcast.
Yeah.
Because
we love pharmaceutical companies.
We've already ticked off the Church of Satan, and they ruined an episode. We don't need to get space AIDS or something like that for ticking off Pfizer,
But I would recommend you listen to the CDC's advice, or else YouTube might do something to your channel.
Yeah. Listen to the experts, kids, and trust the science.
And it is just so crazy that Bill Gates funds the NGOs that tell them all the information, and that he has all this influence over
Bill
things.
Gates,
It's crazy.
Bill Gates is a great
patriot.
Sack of shit.
He's just a simple farmer.
I need a bleep. I just need a bleep on here. So I can
Joe, show me them biologics.
Okay. We need to not go down the rabbit hole on this, because we got some more stuff to get to, and I know this is going to create an argument, because it always does. My big nothing burger for the year. Wait for it, guys. David is winding up. My biggest nothing burger for the year was alien disclosure. We didn't get bodies. We didn't get craft. To me, I need the physical evidence. We always talk about means, motive, and material evidence when we're talking about how we can evaluate whether or not something is factual. We've had a lot of progress, I will grant, to just head you off at the pass, because I know you're just chomping at the bit to destroy
so you know
me.
what I'm going to say.
I know exactly where he's trying to go. We've had a lot of progress, and I will grant that.
Yeah.
But we didn't get what I feel like I need to really conclusively or even substantially believe that disclosure is real, and that's biological components, bodies or craft, right? Whether they be, fragments or whole or whatever. To me, the coincidental timing of release of certain, disclosure information, certain interviews, certain hearings has always coincided, to me, somewhat suspiciously with other important things that are happening in the news cycle. I know sometimes they're tied together, but how did I do disarming all your arguments, Dave?
You tried. It was nice.
Right.
I mean, I don't think you're wrong. I'm like if your standard is like, if your standard is, I need to either believe in aliens or not, and this hasn't made me believe, then sure, okay.
I think we've made progress towards it.
I mean, I don't technically, I wouldn't say that I believe in aliens, right? In the sense of like, I believe I have to exert my will upon myself to make myself think a certain way about them. I kind of think of it like, this is an interesting thing that's happening. A lot of the arguments around it are dogmatically narrow, rather than what I would articulate as a tolerance and openness mind frame of abundance of thinking, saying, hey, this can be many things. And one of the most interesting things we don't know.
Okay.
And that this year was a huge year for revelation of that, because of things that we do know. Meaning, because of acts that changed the laws, that created the incentives, that allowed for the whistleblower protections to make these sorts of things happen this year.
True.
It could also all happen because Joe Biden has a terrible economy. He's trying to distract us from it.
Could be.
That said, if so, it's failed miserably because he has the lowest numbers ever of any president at this point in the presidency, and everyone knows it. Right. True. And no one's distracted by it. And none of these things have actually come at an attention cost, Adam/Joe, because and I know that it's ipso facto axiomatically come at an attention cost because it's a zero-sum game. But that doesn't suggest that there isn't. It could be happening because two things happen in society at the same time.
Sure.
It seems to me, and just I feel like history proves this out, the president really has no real sway over alien disclosure. Like, I think presidents have been trying to get at the whole alien disclosure thing in the past, and they've failed. Like, Bill Clinton was really big on this. Reagan was pretty big on this, right? And like a lot of senators have tried. And so we're seeing maybe a potential move through the David Grush stuff towards more transparency. What I would actually say is probably my biggest takeaway. It's similar to I just last night actually listened to Tucker Carlson's interview with Breaking Points with Cigar from Breaking Points, and kind of in the back 5 minutes of it, they were talking about the alien stuff, and Tucker said some stuff that I was like, I think that's where I'm at, is that there's something here. We don't quite know what it is. I think there's potentially some dark forces at play here. And we need to unveil more, but worried that some of the stuff that we're going to unveil could be very
troubling. Yeah.
Well, and I think particularly with like a lot of the agencies behind this and some of the individual actors, it's not necessarily like the CIA as a whole is trying. It's like individual like subsectors of agencies that are kind of like almost like rogue agents within the government.
Right.
That seems to be much more where I'm interested in.
I completely agree with that. And I think your point about prior presidents having tried to bring this stuff to light and failed indicates that there are forces that are deeper entrenched and ostensibly more powerful at continuing to conceal the truth here than the president, which is supposed to be, the leader of the free world, one of the most powerful people in the world, right? And so to me, to your point, David, about being tolerant of, and open to, all of these ideas kind of percolating and coming forward and progress being made, I would invoke the tolerance paradox and say that if we're tolerant of this really piecemeal, this very incremental movement towards something, when we know that there's something really great underneath the surface, we open ourselves up to basically diluting real progress. So we have to be intolerant in a sense to this mediocrity of stepwise movement towards disclosure.
Sure.
And we need to be more adamant that we get the deep disclosure, that we know there's something riding underneath the surface. So how do we dig to that level and get that out? That's what I want. There were big claims made about what disclosure could be this year, and we did not get that. So that's why it's nothing burger for me.
If I were to guess too, I would actually suspect a lot of this stuff is almost transnational, and it's almost outside of government purview of what senators and things can actually get through these hearings.
Yeah.
Well, other than that, we know that they are keeping the House UAP investigatory committee out of executive branch agencies, right? Which is an exposure of the deep state, which is like a very good thing. And I actually agree with you, Joe. I think we should have a high standard for what we believe in and what we're going to say is truth, right? But we also need to appreciate. I think the only thing, my only criticism is the lack of appreciation for how universally different this year was from every other year before that.
For sure.
When it comes to that, and so it's like I will only say it's not a nothing burger in the sense that we've made tremendous progress in convincing the public that there's something going on here that the government's keeping from them and lying to them about.
Yeah.
Specifically putting out false information for decades that we now know is false.
Yep.
Right. So if that's true, and if these things are available, it would be 2023 when looking back would have said, this is when we began to discover the truth.
Sure.
And I want to appreciate that moment rather than just be like, that's not something worth appreciating just because we have a higher standard for our evidence claim.
I want more. I want it all.
Well, me too. Yeah, everyone does. Yeah. I don't think there's a person in this space that doesn't want to actually know what's going on.
Yeah, true. All right. Next thing, the hottest take offered on the Human Reaction podcast.
Mine's first.
Kyle, let's start with
It's
yours.
the best one.
Wait. Are we starting with mine? Or
No,
are we starting
you've been starting with him every time. It's my turn, Joe.
I was going to say we're going to save the best for last because yours is the best.
Mine is the best every time.
Okay, yeah. Mine's actually probably the most boring, to be honest. It was Dave.
It was me.
It was Dave.
Wow. Ouch.
No, I thought it was a funny way of articulating a foreign policy point where Dave made the claim that Joe Biden is basically like a pirate lord. Where a lot of the foreign policy decisions are us just conducting piracy in the Middle East. And you would be able to explain it a little bit better than me because you were the one that like discovered what was going on here. But yeah.
It was specifically oil shipments from Iran, and that we've been in this tit for tat with Iran for a long time, stealing their oil and trying to sell it on various different markets.
Actually,
and
like
sometimes being
raiding their
successful.
ships and funding the raiding of their ships.
Literally forcing them to go to our ports to try to sell their oil. That was a wild moment. And then the fact that it just went right through the news media and no one be like, wait, we're doing piracy as an official government policy? Come on, man. Exactly. So I appreciate that you put that up there. And we put Joe Biden in a pirate hat on the cover of that one.
It was solid.
It was
solid.
Yeah.
And that was really good. That was good journalistic digging on your part, I thought. Because like no one's offered that take before. That was novel.
Yeah.
That was great.
Well,
I've never seen that anywhere.
Yeah,
No.
if we formally had like a public discourse of like, should we be pirates? Should we be taking oil from Iran and like trying to sell them in our markets? That would be a weird moment, wouldn't it? Like
We should have that.
It'd be so self-aware for American public discourse about such things.
Yes.
We should somehow bring that to the debate stage.
Vivek, looking at you, big guy.
Only Vivek could bring that up into the debate stage.
Yes.
We dropped the receipts on it, so hopefully someone picks it up.
Yes. Okay, I'm going to go next because we are saving yours for last. My favorite, hottest take offered on the show was Kyle's Jordan Peterson is the Socrates of our time clip, which triggered the hell out of TikTok and has been historically this year our best performing TikTok clip of all time with something around 44,000 total views. So let's check it out.
I've believed that Jordan Peterson is kind of the Socrates of our time. And because I'm seeing exactly the Socrates history of what exactly happened to Socrates in Athens is like exactly what's happened to Jordan Peterson. In like literally the parallels are like uncanny right here. Is one of the big things with Jordan Peterson right here is like he went through this whole debacle of like the entire media and the entire apparatus of the media was saying that he was corrupting the youth, right? Like he's a sophist corrupting the youth, which is exactly what they said about Socrates. And that then they had to put Socrates through like a re-education and a trial before he ended up ultimately taking the hemlock, which everybody cheered for him. And one of the things that was going on in the background of that is like if you've read any of like the old Greek plays, is that there was legit propaganda where they would put him in at like they would put Socrates in as the supervillain in all of their stuff. And it's the same thing that Marvel did.
Marvel did with Red Skull.
With Red Skull.
He was gonna
Yes.
Yeah. Whoever made that clip, cut it short.
Well, that would be YouTube's fault because they require your clips to be 60 seconds or less. So we just cut all of our clips to 60 seconds. 60 seconds. So that's all you get. But
Don't forget to follow our TikTok for some real great, TikToks.
Yeah,
Right.
TikTok has done well for us for sure. It's certainly our best performing social media platform. Instagram, looking at you. What happened? We were doing so good, and then I think we got shadow banned.
Yeah.
Yeah, I even saw somebody in the comments was saying like, "Hey, I think you guys got shadow banned."
Oh, for sure. We went from like 30 to 50,000, engagements per post to like 15.
Got shut down all of a sudden. It's very strange that happened.
Yeah.
Zuck does not like us.
No, the Socrates clip, and like I still stand by that, where Jordan Peterson really he played this very important role in that 2016 2017 era where he inspired a lot of young men, and I think we're still going to be watching the repercussions of that, the consequences of that. And we watched the Red Skull thing happen, and also just like the way the media treated him, right? We saw him as this like outcast figure that ended up becoming the like probably the most famous person in the world at the time. And you were supposed to hate him. Like all the media was targeting him. They were talking about how he's like talking about like enforcement misogyny, and they're talking about all these big.
His followers are all incels.
Yeah, right. And And it was just interesting to watch. And that was what happened to Socrates, where they put all this propaganda against him to this guy that was like, and it's the same archetype that he's not the only person that's done this. Like, I'm not saying like Jordan Peterson is Socrates. I'm saying like the things
exactly
around him.
Like,
yeah, that's true. That's true. The comment said that.
You gotta be precise in your speech.
But it's also like the Jesus narrative too, right?
Oh,
where
yeah.
he inspires a bunch of people. He's kind of like this like roaming traveling thought leader, and then you end up having the establishment forces of the Pharisees and the Sadducees being like, hey, Mr. Romans, we have this guy, and right?
So the clip where you come out and say Jordan Peterson is exactly like Jesus is going to go big next. We're going to get that one on. That's
true.
Well, no, I think you're
Jordan
right.
Peterson is Jesus.
There's a compression here. There's an archetype of like the person who rises, and then everybody goes like, oh, there's changing us. And so we got to suppress that. And there's like forces. It's like white blood cells in like a static system come and attack that thing and try to crumble it. I think an interesting story for this year is Jordan Peterson as a kind of his comeback this year from 2022 was relatively quiet. 2023 started to pick back up and be more out there after the sickness.
And similar to Socrates taking the hemlock, Jordan Peterson took the pills.
Uh-huh.
And
he's never been the same since.
He's never been the same since. Went for his treatment in Russia, and everything got weird after that.
And then he joins the Daily Wire.
But it is interesting where you end up seeing a lot of these figures. Like Andrew Tate's kind of taken the mantle of the Jordan Peterson phenomenon in recent years.
Yikes! As like the number one hate figure of the conventional media.
Again, inspired a lot of young men, took all the brunt, a lot of lawfare going on, corrupting the youth. Those are the exact like words. Corrupting the youth is exactly what they would layer at him. And then he got hit with all these Romanian sex trafficking things, which seem to be not true.
At this point,
the more they go, right?
Yeah. I'm not sure. I'm not sure where the legal battle has wound up, but I do wonder to what degree. Well, I do think it's true that either case, what we're seeing is a response to a change in the system, right? And I don't really like the system, like in like a conspiratorial way. I just mean there's a staticness, there's a equilibrium that society reaches, and when you try to introduce something that disrupts, there's oftentimes a pushback. And I think in each one of these cases, we're observing some kind of similar cycle of that same archetypal story, archetypal story of rise and fall. That if you talked about Brad Pitt, and when the media was obsessed with him for a little while, and then all of a sudden he fell off, it's the same story, right? It's just we're just doing it on a thing that's, I think, attacking more fundamental pillars of our social order, which is like, what is the role of men, how to conceive of the meaning crisis and deal with it. Whether it's like Andrew Tate saying, deal with it by not being broke and go work out, or if it's Jordan Peterson saying, go make your bed, Either one, it's just like people trying to deal with this social phenomena that the mainstream, I think, wants to ignore. And then when they try to deal with it, they get popular, and then all of a sudden there's a pushback because it's not a thing we're supposed to talk about.
Well, and we got a lot of positive comments on our Christmas episode talking about men in society too. And this is the same type of arc that exists here, right?
This is now a Red Pill podcast.
Yeah, we are fresh and fit now. Bring in the Miami hose.
Get Bennett on Tinder here in Bozeman, and
that's already it.
Would you like to be on a podcast? And you're our new fill the room with this stupid bit. All right.
What a stupid son of a bitch.
Not the one we were going for.
No, it's the closest thing that I have.
Man, you don't have that one yet?
I don't. I can't find it. You got to find it for me.
I'll get it to you.
Yeah, you got to find it.
Yeah.
All right. So the hottest take ever offered on the Human Reaction podcast from our recurring guest and good friend of the show, Kat Dwyer. Here it is.
Next week, the teeth of the Russian devils will gnash ever harder, and their rabid mouths will foam in uncontrollable frenzy, as the world will see a favorite Kremlin propagandist pay for their crimes. And this puppet of Putin is only the first. Russia's war criminal propagandists will all be hunted down, and justice will be served, as we in Ukraine are led on this mission by faith in God, liberty, and complete liberation.
What kind of kink is that?
Oh, it's so meta. Us laughing at us laughing. Okay.
And then
her little wig and her little uniform. That's so savage, but true.
Is that?
Because everyone thinks that. Like it was tapping in to the nerve stem of everyone who's seen that video and saying, "What am I watching right now?" It's just
Seriously.
And it was such a genuine reaction from Kat because I'm pretty sure she hadn't seen that clip yet. We had all seen it, and like it was just such a genuine reaction. Like, what am I watching right now?
Oh man. And I try to make it all serious by bringing it around to free speech and how it's being suppressed in Ukraine. But
Yeah, you need to suppress the nerd in you and let the humor flourish.
Let it rise. You're right.
No, that was great, and Kat's awesome, and we need to have her back on the show ASAP. God, what a moment. Okay, so I noticed that some new things have been added here, and we're getting up there in time. I want to make sure that we have time to get to those, so I think maybe we just cruise through some of the predictions and stuff like that.
Well, we got to do our resolutions.
We can do resolutions, but
chill out.
I'm just not going to go too deep into a lot of the prediction stuff that we levied at the beginning of the year. See how we did, right? Because I think, like, for example, breaking the Ukraine bubble.
I was right about everything.
David was right about everything. Check. Vivek is evidence of that. He was offering a lot of the takes that we were offering on the show. So
And it's really changed the Overton window on it.
it has. Yeah. And you can tell where he's getting his news, obviously.
Yeah. We love you, Vivek. Thanks for listening.
David, you thought crypto was going to have a better year. We would see the bottom of the bear market. Yeah. I think Kyle would say that's accurate. Even
Bitcoin up 170%.
I called it within a month.
Yeah, bottom of the bear market was like right before this podcast started. It was early December. So, yeah.
We've got an oracle in our
I just wish I would have spent more money on Bitcoin at that point.
Yeah.
But then I'd be holding on to an asset that I can't give to anybody without reporting to the government, apparently.
Oh, yeah. That was a story that I just saw. Apparently, there's now a thing. If you receive more than $10,000 in a crypto asset, you have to report it to the IRS within 15 days.
Along with social security numbers of who you're giving it to.
Yeah, with this all weird contact information.
It's like KYC on steroids.
It's like completely unenforceable, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah,
right?
I'm trying to kill it.
Buy and hold anyway. So
so we also had the recession this year. Henri talked about it. Kyle talked about more bank failures. I think basically what happened was the Fed kicked the ball down the road, right? The can is now kicked. We're going to have a larger asset bubble problem later. Maybe it shows up in college loans as college tuition drops. Mm-hmm. Maybe it has something to do, or college attendance drops, or maybe it has to do with another housing crisis. But we'll see.
I think it's evidenced by the fact that we have just seen the national debt tick over 34 trillion as of what, yesterday or the day before that?
Right. And then we have the Fed has said they're probably going to lower rates sometime next year. So that way Bidenomics can all shake out in time.
Means stock market's going to start booming probably.
It's already booming. I mean, it's already high.
Right now, like I don't think we've seen the beginning of where it will go if interest rates
drop again. Yeah, it's going to be wild.
Not financial advice here, guys. Yeah, I mean, I predicted that for one, the show would still exist at the end of 2023, and we do. Congratulations.
Nailed it. Good job, Joe.
not without some attempts to subvert us by the deep state, destroying the audio on the last two
episodes. If you guys could have heard the last episode we recorded, that's never going to see the light of day. Whew,
it was hot.
We went deep down the conspiracy rabbit hole.
We had a studio audience, and they said they loved it.
Yeah, no, we had a studio audience that said it was the best show we've ever done. And
to be clear, it was one guy, and he's a sponsor of the show. So.
But
take that for what it's worth.
That's why he gives us the zesty beverages.
Thank you, Griff. We appreciate you. No, we will redo that show because we had our good friend Wilson Raska in studio to talk about all sorts of really spicy topics. So we're going to do that one again for sure. So look out for that. I also predicted that more Democrats might leave the party after Tulsi Gabbard and Kyrsten Sinema left the year previous, and then RFK Jr. goes and leaves the Democratic Party to run as an independent for president. Kind of a watershed moment there. So I'll take that. I'll take that W.
And also, Joe Manchin said he was going to be, but then he just ended up retiring. But I've been hearing scuttlebutt that he's going to be running for president as an indendent.
Interesting.
I don't know how true that is. I've been hearing that. I've been hearing that scuttlebutt. So who knows where that goes?
Say scuttlebutt again.
Scuttlebutt.
I love that word.
I love that word. Joe actually taught me that word like 10 years ago.
Joe Manchin?
Or Joe.
Me.
Dave.
Yeah.
Dave.
Words.
Yeah.
I love it.
Scuttlebutt.
I just wanted you to say it again.
I've used it for so long.
I just wanted to sample it for the thing.
Scuttlebutt.
Okay. Let's see here. Resolutions for 24. David, where are you at? What you want?
Okay, so this year I'm going to get back to fight weight. I'm a little overweight from the shoulder injury. I'm going to do 2 comps, and then I'm going to get my blue belt.
To be clear, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah. And then I'm behind on reading. I need to get my books back up. I've been slacking.
Yeah.
So
how many books do you normally read per year?
So it's somewhere between 20 and 34, and this year was in the low 20s. So
nerd. Okay. No, that's awesome.
Mostly audiobooks, to be fair. I mean, I don't read a lot of, I don't have the time for that, but
that's true. That's fair. Kyle.
I want to boost up my social media presence. I used to be very active on social media for various reasons, and I used to have several Twitter accounts before they all got banned, and I lost them all. And I want to kind of pull myself out of being in this very niche area that I'm at right now. If you follow me on Twitter, you just see me LARPing as a penguin and talking about crypto. But just kind of starting to boost my own social media presence for the sake of this podcast, because we are all in the media business and we all need to do that, right?
Quite true. Quite true.
So yeah, I'm going to be kind of working on trying to figure out how to play the algorithmic game and get that follower number up and boost those numbers.
Those are rookie numbers. You got to get those numbers up. Well, if you're listening to this or watching, go follow Kyle everywhere. His Twitter handle is in the description of the video or in the show notes.
Captain Quigley.
At Captain Quigley.
But also follow all of you guys as well for everything. Because again, in order for this podcast to grow, we all need to get big.
We all need to grow. Yeah. And we want you to grow too. So send us comment your Twitter handle in the comments of this video, and we'll follow you back.
Follow for follow?
That's right. Follow Friday, baby. Let's go. All right. My resolution is to gain 10 pounds of muscle, and I'm working on it.
Nice.
Working on it. Thanks to my good buddy Anthony Suzio for putting me on the Jim Wendler program for strength, and we'll work in some hypertrophy too.
Cool.
Should be fun.
Yeah, I kind of feel we're talking about it again, but I was surprised by what he said this last time. So
really?
Yeah. Well, and this is what we're going to do to get the program sexy, right? Because we can't. Right. We're not cute, right? Sorry,
guys. Kyle's pretty cute. He LARPs as a penguin. That's default cute.
You see that penguin profile?
Are we cool? We're kind of nerdy. But we could be hot, right?
Super hot.
You gain some weight, Kyle and I lose some weight, and we're there, right?
Done deal. Done deal.
We're never going to be hot.
Hey, not with that attitude.
We can take cool. We can take cool. I think we can get that.
Yeah.
Okay.
As we continue developing this, we can take it.
Yeah. Libertarianism is becoming cool. I mean, look at Javier Milei. He's up on stage like making out with pop singers or whatever.
That's his wife, but yeah.
Well, still,
but
she's also a pop singer.
But the Economist also taught me that he is a sex guru. So.
Yeah,
true.
So one of us got to be. Never mind.
But we could be cute. Just sorry, one of us.
It's a sex guru.
I volunteer.
we could be.
He's tribute. He's up here just like.
I am saying we could be cute. Just one of us has to transition.
Yeah, that's true. That's a point.
Well, I'm sorry. So, do we draw straws for that? What do we do here?
I'm pretty confident. Okay, so there are female thirst traps, but they're rare, right? I mean, for the most part, hot on the internet means being female.
Oh, I see. Yeah,
Let's be honest.
Yeah,
true.
Yeah. Thirst traps for women.
Therefore, we got to be the new fresh and fit white guy, fresh and fit, fresh fit white.
Yeah, we'll workshop it,
or we just get a fourth chair.
Yeah, fourth chair. All right, so that's the resolutions. What's our predictions? So I have a couple predictions I've been thinking about because I think there's going to be a crisis in college enrollment this year.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be something with that because I have seen some stories about enrollment dropping, specifically around men, and I think that has implications on the gender wars. I think that's going to be even worse this next year. I think we've hit peak woke, and so we're going to go into hopefully what I kind of see this year or maybe the next year. It's going to get political, right? But I think there's going to be more pushback from like the based crowd. And then lastly, I think the base crowd is going to cannibalize itself this year. I think Calendar Gate is actually a great example of what we're going to see this year. As what it means to be based is going to be fought over by people who want it to mean social conservatism versus people who want it to mean a broader, more 1990s-esque kind of like you're willing to speak truth to power, you're willing to like talk about the controversial stuff versus based meaning get married young, have lots of kids. That's your active rebellion.
Live on a homestead, drink raw milk.
The trad conservatives.
The trad. There's going to be a division.
There's trads.
Well, that's interesting. I didn't see that coming, but I think that's prescient because we saw this happen within the woke movement,
right?
Where there was this jockeying for what woke is, or you have to be more woke than X or whatever. And so all of a sudden, like the progressives kind of started like eating their own in terms of who was more or less woke. And so I could definitely see that occurring on the other side. And around Calendar Gate, just to clarify for folks that aren't obsessed with Twitter and stuff. There was this conservative calendar with lots of, attractive conservative women in varying, interesting scenes in the kitchen or whatever, drinking beer or whatever. And it got a lot of hate as being this demonic thing by the Christian conservative component of that movement. And so, I think that's definitely an indicator of that.
Well, and that's actually where a lot of this like hot, cool, cute branding stuff comes from, is like, you need those types of elements in your movement, because one of the things that I think we're all in agreement that we're seeing right now is there's a shift on. It used to be very cool to be on the left. Like, it's kind of like, you're on the right, gross. But like, everybody that's cool is on the left. And that is completely starting to flip right now.
Yeah, like you posted that Green Day video, right? Where they're like dogging on MAGA, and it doesn't seem cool.
The punk rockers are just like the corporate stooges now.
It seems like MSNBC. You're like, it just, and I'm not talking about my intellectual thoughts about it. What I'm talking about is just the way it feels, just the way it orientates towards the way you think about it when it happens, right?
For people that don't know, just over New Year's, Green Day did a revision to their song live, where in the American Idiot song, it was like, don't want to be an American idiot, it's the normal lyric, and they said, don't want to be a MAGA Republican or something.
I'm not a part of the MAGA agenda.
I'm not a part of the MAGA agenda, right? And it was just kind of like cringe.
Well, because when that song, the reason why it's so cringy from a cultural analysis point of view is it was written in response to Bush, when the Bush administration was so powerful. Like, they were invading countries, and like the press was all going, yay! And it was such an obvious like megalith that it felt rebellious then, but now when it talks about it, it doesn't feel rebellious, because you have
because like the MAGA movement's not the establishment. So
right.
You're not, and punk rock is supposed to be like the anti-establishment music, right? And all the punk rockers from 2 decades ago, when punk rock was a thing, are still trying to do punk rock, but like harsh.
But meanwhile, they've made their tens or hundreds of millions of dollars, and like Billy Joe Armstrong, lead singer of Green Day, like
they're in the cocktail parties,
renounced his citizenship. The U.S. moved to England. Like, so who gives a fuck what he thinks? I don't really care, honestly. And frankly, my first concert was Green Day, so they've fallen pretty far in my eyes.
Well, and that's also another thing, because the college enrollment thing is also. I saw a survey done. Among like businesses and big corporations, and they're suspecting that in 2024 their non-college educated employee hires is going to be up like 50% or something.
Wow.
So it really shows, I think, where the market is when it comes to college degrees, and how oversaturated college degrees are, and how people are kind of like, not really that useful, depending on the, which field you're in. And it seems to be most fields.
Yeah. Well, get certified, don't get a degree. That seems like to be the advice for anyone who's entering college now.
Yeah.
I would suspect over the next decade or so that we start to see a major revision on the idea of certification, culturally speaking, and what that actually means. Especially because it's just as more and more the new generation is rising. They're the internet generation. We're just going to see like internet alternatives to college education that's probably going to be more efficient and more effective.
Right. Well, I mean, I think the interesting thing, and I saw a similar article to you, Kyle. I pulled up a similar one here. No college degree, no problem. Or companies are eliminating requirements to attract the workers they need, especially in tech. They've basically been deprecating the importance of a degree as a signal for competence, right? Because previously, I think that's what it meant. It's like, okay, you can sit through doing something for 4 years, you can pass the required, checkpoints to get a degree, and so we can trust that you are at least a seemingly competent individual to work for our company. But it's become so ubiquitous. This doesn't really signal excellence the same way that it used to. Mm-hmm. And I think you're right. I think you're going to start to see people judged much more on their merits when it comes to employment, which is a good thing in my view.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then going to the DEI stuff, we kind of did talk about this prior with like the Disney, the Elon, all this stuff. It just really comes down to that whole system, the ESG, the DEI, all the acronym wars have like failed. Like the acronym boys, everybody that has acronyms, like they're falling apart. And I think we're just going to continue to see that as we're watching this new culture of like what cool is going to change everything.
Yeah. What do you guys think is going to happen with Trump this year?
He wins the presidency, Republicans probably take the Senate. I think those are both two fights where if it isn't decided in a legal case, it'll go that way. for Trump, and then it's mostly Republicans to lose, right? So they could botch it. You never know. It could be a gaffe.
Are you mostly working off of current polling numbers to suggest that?
Also the map and the difficulties of the map. Also the bifurcation of our social order and the way I think current sentiment is looking when it comes to the overall impression of popularity of the various different candidates.
Oh, when you refer to the map, what do you mean?
Just which states the Democrats have to defend. They have a lot of tough states. And then which ones the Republicans have real opportunities in with solid candidates. So,
do you
absent shenanigans, I think that's true.
Well, I was just going to ask, what role do you think election integrity, quote unquote, is going to play in the election?
I've always been a skeptic of large scale fraud. I think it's really up to the people who are accusing it to prove it. Very difficult to prove and difficult to litigate. And I get all the challenges there. Absolutely. So I usually take it when I'm doing my analysis as a null variable, right? Could go either way. Most of the time it doesn't play a role, but sometimes it might. So I wouldn't ever prognosticate on assuming there's going to be something like that, because it is very difficult. Like it's funny because you'll have people who have very strong feelings about this, but don't know much about how the electoral system works in terms of like how authentication of the elections work, things like that. And then you have some people who are very well educated on it. What I find is that, the more you've done actual get out the vote, to realize how difficult it would be to do fraud on the scale of hundreds of thousands of votes. Hundreds of votes, definitely could do absolutely easily, but hundreds of thousands, very real hard to scale.
For me, when I'm saying shenanigans, it's actually less so that type of stuff, and it's more so like Twitter files type of stuff.
Yeah.
Things like suppression of stories and how the intelligence agencies were very involved in that is no small thing. And polling suggests that if the Hunter Biden laptop story was able to go out effectively, and the New York Post didn't get banned from Twitter when that happened, that Trump would have won the election. That's what current polling of that story kind of suggests. That type of stuff is the most shenanigan-ridden area to me.
Yeah. Well, I think there were also legal, tactical things that the left were able to execute. Ballot harvesting, for example,
changing election rules in very key districts and key states,
right?
All mail-in ballot,
which we're talking like $400 billion from Facebook's foundation.
But to be fair,
right?
That's all legal. That's what I was trying to get to.
What I meant was the illegal stuff,
of course. But yes, the legal things that the left were able to execute effectively, Republicans are going to be much more aware of and much more active in just fighting fire with fire this year. Would you say?
Yeah, but I mean, like, ballot harvest has been a thing the Republicans have done forever. Right?
But obviously not as well. Right?
Yeah, we don't have... Republicans have struggled to have grassroots movements forever. They don't have the unions, right, where you can pay people to go out and do these sort of things. Republicans don't have the same base. So fundamentally, they've always struggled to have the kind of people you need to do that well.
So if the Republicans are going to win this election, if Trump is going to win this election, are everyday people going to have to get involved in that way?
Yeah, and they will. I mean, there's going to be grassroots stuff around this for sure.
Cool.
Yeah. If the Republicans think they're going to do this all with air warfare, I don't think that's going to work. If Trump, in the past, he hasn't always had the best ground game. I think he was going to need one if it's a close election for these battleground states. But I imagine they're trying to pull that together. I can't imagine they wouldn't.
Yeah.
At this point, I mean, they're still flush with money. Why wouldn't they?
Also, there's a thing too with Trump, as like I think oftentimes Republicans kind of forget how much people that aren't in their circles actually do despise Trump. Like just a lot of just regular left-leaning people, they have certain opinions about him, and there is no swaying. Like there is like a small group there in the middle that can be swayed, but like a large swath of the country cannot be swayed on Trump no matter what. And that actually makes him kind of a tricky candidate in a lot of ways. Unlike maybe some new blood, if there was new blood that came in, which it doesn't seem to be, that's going to be the case.
Right.
But
it's mostly a turnout question, right? You're not going to persuade your high propensity voters anyway. They've already decided Trump and Biden. It's just like that underlying layer of hundreds of thousands of Americans who don't regularly vote. Can you get them into the process on scale enough to make the difference?
Yeah.
And it looks like Trump has the high ground right now on it, and it's his to lose.
And seemingly, the more there seems to be these like legal warfare battles that are going on, and all the things that how we were talking about blowback around Trump right here, that seems to be energizing people to the point where they're like, huh, something seems off. Why does everybody hate him so much? You know, like that seems to be a factor that exists here, and people are becoming more skeptical to the propaganda that exists there.
Yeah. Very interesting. Well,
what's yours?
I would say my biggest prediction for 2024 is that there will be an uptick in cyber warfare events, hacking, other things. I mean, we've already seen a good bit of that in 2023 with different, like Rumble went down like a week ago, or there was a pretty widespread, attack, so to speak. Obviously, we've had our boy Klaus Schwab at the World Economic Forum warning about this being sort of the next pandemic and being worse than COVID-19. We recently had the Obamas produce a film on Netflix called Leave the World Behind, where a cyber attack knocks out the grid, and it's basically pandemonium, and everyone's cut off from everyone, and all the Teslas are being controlled and crashing into one another to block off roadways, and it's total chaos. And so the skeptic in me, the conspiracy theorist in me, if you will, if you want to call it that, sees this as maybe a little bit of pre-programming. Sees this as well, we know it exists. It's been done for events in the past.
Do you remember Who Made Who by AC/DC?
No.
It was made for a movie. I'm trying to look it up. No. It was a movie. No. That was the album. But it's actually the same premise. It was in the 1980s. Like the Obama movie is actually a rehash.
I mean, it's not a very novel like story arc, and in fact, I watched it. It is absolutely full of symbolism, and I wish that we had Wilson's episode out because we talk a lot about that. But man, it's full of symbolism, and I took copious notes about it because I wanted to talk about it if we were going to.
Maximum Overdrive was the horror movie, or like the kind of disaster movie I'm thinking of.
Yeah,
that it's pretty much the same plot, right? It's like that. Only in this case, it's aliens attacking the whole globe rather than a state actor doing the cyber warfare.
Well, and I think we saw wargaming take place ahead of COVID, right? It was I think September or November, somewhere in that time frame of 2019. There was the COVID-19, or it wasn't called COVID-19, but it was a pandemic war game that was carried out at the global organizational level, and then obviously we had this pathogen take over the world in the next succeeding years, and so there was recently a cyber attack war game carried out. So my bet is that we start to experience more of that.
It's pre-programming.
Yeah.
So I would suggest that there's been an increase in. Do you mean state actors or non-state actors? Is one of I think the more interesting parts of that question, because increasing amounts of cyber warfare, I guess I don't really like that word, right? Because it kind of indicates like state actors, but it should be a larger net than that. It should be state and non-state actors.
Well, I mean, I think you have kinetic warfare take place between state and non-state actors. So I wouldn't necessarily put a pin in one or the other.
Yeah, I think in the popular imagination it evokes that.
Sure.
Right? China, as in the government of China, versus a illegal set of hackers from China.
Sure.
We don't distinguish between those two things.
Right. And it honestly doesn't matter, because whatever happens, is going to be leveraged.
It does matter if it goes into the physical space and it winds up with kinetic warfare with China.
And that's what I mean is that whatever happens is going to be leveraged by governments anywhere to implicate whomever it is they want to perceive as their enemy.
And also to use as plausible deniability, right? The NSA hires a black market hacker group to do something that they want.
Right.
So there's plausible deniability.
This happens with the North Korean hacker group. There's a very famous North Korean hacker group all the time that operates in crypto quite a bit, and that is always the person to blame for the reason to imprison this person that made this software program, try to ban and blacklist these addresses, et cetera, is because they all interacted with this so-called North Korean cyber hacker group. I do think that we're going to see a rise of like cyber syndicates that have become kind of like, think back in the day Anonymous, how everybody had like this, this fantastical view of Anonymous. I think we're going to end up seeing more and more of that, especially as like the sovereign individual archetype starts to rise more. We're going to be seeing these like pseudonymous, anonymous cyber warfare entities that are like on par with state actors.
Like penguins?
No, we're just cute and pudgy.
Oh, that's what they want you to think.
We just have all the developers and we get all the stuff.
Oh, but what a good cover.
I'm saying this to agree with you, Joe. I just want to make sure it's clear.
Sure.
My mental model of it is that there's so many people who now have, a tremendous amount. It's not like it was in the 1990s where you had less than 1% of the population knew how to program, right?
Sure.
Way more people now, way more incentive, way more people who live online completely. The whole infrastructure hacking thing and the pre-programming thing, we should discuss that sometime. Maybe we'll do a conspiracy podcast. Like, what does this mean? Because I have a lot of epistemological questions about it. But we've been warning about cyber attacks since Y2K. Once again, like this is a perennial problem that we're always talking about. But I do think that the increasing amount of onlineness and state actors making it their main shtick is going to make it more likely.
Yeah.
I will say something about your pet budget. There was actually a couple weeks ago a major hacker that was masquerading as a pudgy penguin.
Am I good or what?
Yeah.
Recently. And turns out I was in a group chat with him.
Oh man, that's how they get Kyle.
But it's just like a large with like hundreds of people in it. So like it's like I've never actually personally interacted with him, but there was a guy that.
And you're wondering why your social media accounts got banned.
But that is a thing where a lot of people in these realms, like understanding kind of like hacker culture and cyber culture, especially like in the crypto space and the AI space and stuff, it is just very like. Someday there's going to be textbooks written about it sociologically for how these like groups get together and how you end up having people internationally all kind of working together as these like collective brains. Like that's the only way I can really describe it is it's like this collective brain phenomenon and then everybody's like putting thing into like this muscle where you have like all these people with a tremendous amount of buying power, of like hacker knowledge, of whatever that exists.
We didn't talk about Wall Street Bets. Was that this year?
That was the previous year, but it's the same type of phenomenon, right? It's the buying power of it,
or computing power, or whatever,
So like last bull market, you end up having a Reddit page that's like collective of all these retail traders that are, when COVID happens, it hurts like AMC movie theaters. It hurts GameStop is going under, all this stuff. And they just pump those numbers up by all going in because supply and demand, like all prices are. It's kind of simple, supply and demand. And you all of a sudden have this massive amount of demand just inflowing kind of artificially because of all this. And they just pump the price up. And everybody's like, we're not selling. And that keeps the price up and the market cap high, right? We're seeing those types of like economic warfare entities kind of starting to exist. It's just interesting to watch.
Very interesting to watch indeed. And we will have to see how the year carries on. But for now, I think that's everything we got. So unless you guys have any final thoughts, we'll sign off here. If you want to join our cyber syndicate, jump into the Discord. We're going to be moving markets in no time. I'm sure we've got 50, 60 people in there. It's great. We'd love to have you. For David, the bald eagle of Liberty Rand, Kyle, Captain Quigley Mac, Bennett, our friendly neighborhood Mossad agent, and myself, Joe Sheehan. Thanks y'all for watching. We'll see you in the next one. And Happy New Year. Thanks for tuning in to Human Reaction. Help us fight internet censorship by liking, commenting, subscribing, following, and sharing the show with your friends. To find us around the internet, visit linktree.com/humanreactionpod. And remember,
well, and this is what we're going to do to get the program sexy, right? Because we can't. Right. We're not cute, right? Sorry,
well, Kyle's pretty cute. He LARPs as a penguin. That's default cute.
You see that penguin profile?
Are we cool? We're kind of nerdy, but we could be hot, right?
Super hot.
You gain some weight, Kyle and I lose some weight, and we're there, right?
Done deal. Done deal.
We're never going to be hot.
Hey, not with that attitude.
We can take cool. We can take cool. I think we can get that.
Yeah.
Okay. As we continue developing this, we can take it.